What's going on, YouTube? Happy Saturday, everybody. Hope you guys are having a good weekend. I know I am, because I'm here with all of you. What better than spending time with my favorite friends out there getting ready for a very rough period of their life. And we're going to talk about that a little bit today. Basically, we're going to talk a little bit about federal prison and your first day in prison, and are you actually really prepared? So we'll give you all a few minutes to join in. Looks like everything is set. We're going a little early today, noon versus 1 p.m. Pacific time. So it should be 3 p.m. for you East Coasters. And I decided to change up the scenery today, as you guys can see. So who do we have with us? Pop up there in the room and let me know who we have in the room. So far it says nobody. Oh, we got two. What's going on, George? How's your trip? I didn't leave yet, George. I'm still home. I'm just in a different room. I don't go on my trip until I don't leave until the 1st. So I'll be leaving next Thursday. Next Thursday. Florida bound. Can't wait. Can't wait. If you haven't already subscribed to my channel, take this time to go ahead and do so now. It's real simple. Up in your top right-hand corner of your YouTube screen, you should see a subscribe button. Please go ahead and subscribe to my channel. Also, there's a notification, a little bell up in the top right-hand corner. That will get you on our notification list. And do not forget to text the word YouTube to 76626. That will put you on our text message list to make sure you receive updates, all of that good stuff. Also, if you're interested in getting your your awesome RDAP Dan wristband, whether it be white, hot pink, or baby blue, all you need to do is go visit us at rdapdan.com. There is a members area. Just click on the members area, become a member. It's completely free. Once you're a member, you have the option to click on the RDAP Dan wristband to send me your information to get one. Or you can also go over and check out our sentencing calculator to help you pick the best possible prison, helps you serve the least amount of days at that prison, and will also tell you the likelihood of getting into the prison of your choice. All right, so now that we got all of that fun stuff out of the way, we're going to talk a little bit about, are you actually prepared for your first day of prison? And I was talking to Scott, who's one of our clients, who's getting ready to surrender on Monday. He was on the show a couple weeks ago, and he's going to be surrendering. Actually, he's heading out Monday, surrendering Tuesday, but he's going to be hitting the road Monday. We're probably going to try to do a live video with him on his way to prison. So he's down for that. So we'll probably give him a call. We'll do a Skype call, and I'll record that or do it live, either way, so you guys can kind of get that feel for somebody getting ready to go in. But he said something to me today on the phone, and it's, getting prepared for your first day in prison. He said, are we actually prepared? Is he actually prepared for prison? And, that's a good question, because some of the challenges that we have, and I made a little list here, so I'm going to go to my cheat sheet. So some of the fears that we have about prison clearly comes from thoughts, ideas, our mind going wild. This has a lot to do with what we think our first day in prison is going to be like. So our mind really tends to run out into this crazy scenario land to where it may not completely be accurate. However, regardless whether it's real or not, at this point in time, it feels very real to us. And I think one of the hardest parts about getting ready for your first couple of days in prison is that your life is going to change as you know it. Everything is going to change. The things that you do, your habits, your luxuries, it's all going to be taken away. So everything you do is going to be different once you get to prison. And because you don't know what that different is, it can be very scary. So for example, a lot of us, we might take comfort in sitting on the couch, relaxing, watching TV when we have time. We might take comfort in going for a walk. We might take comfort in reading a book. It might take comfort in just knowing that you can go take a hot shower in privacy whenever you want. Going into the prison system, you don't have those luxuries any longer. You wonder what's it going to be like taking a shower. And even though it's not like what you might think, you don't really have privacy. There's people waiting next in line for the shower. Especially if it's during like the middle of the day or everybody just went out for a workout. Everybody comes in. Everybody wants to shower at the same time. And clearly there's not enough showers for people. So let's say you're in a unit with 6 showers or 8 showers and you're in a unit with 100 people. Well, maybe 30 people all want to take a shower at the same time. So it forms a line. You're literally waiting in line with your towel, with your shower bag. Your shower bag's going to consist of like your soap, your deodorant, your razor, basic things you would need going in and out of the shower. So you're going to be waiting in line. And if you're not first in line or one of the few first people in line, chances are you're going to get a cold shower. It's not your shower at home. It doesn't have the removable nozzle and different temperatures. You're not going to relax. You're going to be in basically a concrete shower, little stall with a little curtain. And you're going to take a quick shower. You're going to dry off. You're going to put on some basic clothes inside the shower. And then you're going to head out to the main area where maybe you're going to go to the mirrors, the sinks, brush your teeth, do a little shaving. But it's not home. It's not what you're used to. So the comforts of that reality are going to be taken away from you. And you're going to have to develop a new comfort zone on how you're going to do things like take a shower. I think this is where a lot of the fear comes from because these are things that we're not accustomed to. We're not used to doing this in that type of an environment. Some of the other things, eating when you want, going somewhere when you want, standing in line at the chow hall, favoritism. We see a lot of stuff right now in the media about prison reform. What can we do? Prison guards are too mean. Cops are too mean. Prison sentences are too long. And no one's saying none of that's not true. I believe we do need to see prison reform. I'm not sure what capacity it's actually going to happen or when it's going to happen or when they're going to get rid of minimum mandatories. So we don't know when that stuff is going to happen. But one of the things that they don't really focus on too much, which to me seems like a big part of it, and this is not a popular viewed opinion by people that are either going to prison, people that are in prison, people that are for prisoner rights or any type of prison reform. We all look at things from a left and a right side. Right side, harder on crime, harder on prison sentence. Left side, we tend to see more compassion. However, there is a middle ground, and that middle ground is I wouldn't want to be a CO. I used to watch what these COs would go through in prison. We're probably going to be interviewing a CO here in the next, either before I go on my vacation or during my vacation or when I get back. We're going to be interviewing a correctional officer, and some of the stuff I really remember, which stuck out in my mind, and I never quite understood why. And I think I understand more now, but I'll tell you. So let me take you through this scenario. So in prison, there's a lot of rules and there's a lot of regulations. We already know that. There's count times. There's things that are mandatory. Okay, count time is one of the big things. You cannot interrupt COs during count time because count time is how they determine that no one's escaped, no one's died. That's how they keep tabs on where everybody is and where everybody's supposed to be. So they have mandatory count times throughout the day. These mandatory count times usually require you to go to your unit or your bunk or your cell, wherever you might live in that particular moment. And it's a standing count where you got to stand and be quiet. And 2 COs are going to count. Each one of them is going to count, and they need to come up with the same number. If they come up with a different number, they got to do a recount. And you'll see a lot of recounts. They miscount, they make a mistake, they count somebody twice, whatever happens. So knowing you can't interrupt them, what inmates try to do is find ways that they can interrupt them without getting in trouble. So you'll have COs walking down the hall, and right when they get next to your cell, one of your cellies or somebody right across the hall will burp or fart. Just really disgusting. They'll do these things trying to be extra rude to the guards to create conflict, but knowing the guard can't do anything to them because if a guard says something, all the inmate has to say is, man, I can't control when this stuff comes out of me. It's something I have to deal with. And there's not much a guard can really do about it. So when you have inmates that are constantly pushing the envelope, testing the waters, disrespecting on a regular basis, and you've got guards that deal with this in and out, in and out, in and out, at some point you have to imagine that this takes a toll on COs or anybody else that works in that type of environment. And now you've got inmates versus COs. So what happens now? Somebody like you or me goes in there. We don't want any problems. We just want to get through our day. But every other inmate that this guard has seen has been somebody testing the waters or pushing his buttons. So he's prejudging you, thinking this, here comes another asshole who's going to try to test the waters with me. So I got to get to him before he gets to me. And it creates this conflict of how to deal with inmates and how inmates should deal with guards. So as much as we need to work on prison reform and having guards and COs and prison staff more accountable, at the same time, I think it's important for those of us that are getting ready to go to prison, remember that we put ourselves there. We may not like the situation we're in. We may not think it's fair, but we put ourselves there. So you got to remember your first few days in prison are going to be real rough because you're going to be getting accustomed to a new lifestyle and you may not be treated the way you think you should be treated. You might be the best person in the world. Nicest person, gets along with everybody, but everybody else doesn't know that until they get to know you. So COs might be a little rough with you, and rough in the sense of not physically, hopefully, but more in how they talk to you. So Tina Kozart, as you guys know, she just self-surrendered. I spoke to her husband yesterday. Hey, Diana, how are you doing? Rod Pope, what's going on, my man? So I spoke to Tina's husband yesterday, and when he dropped her off, she had on her wedding ring, which you're allowed to have. She had on a religious cross, which you're allowed to have. And the CO said to her at the time of intake, the CO said, "Hey, you may want to give that to your husband and take it back." And she said, "Well, I thought you're allowed to have these things." And he just stopped her dead in her track and he goes, "You're in fucking prison. Give it to him." So she didn't know what to do. She stops and she takes all the stuff off and she gives it to her husband. You know, he leaves with it. And then she gets in the unit and she sees everybody else wearing the wedding band and the religious cross. And, you know, the problem is she had a correctional officer who just felt like flexing his authority. And there was nothing that she could do about it. She could have gotten upset. She could have talked back. She could have said, "This is wrong. You can't do this." And maybe he would have made, you know, who knows what would have happened. But we know that possibly he could have made her life a little rougher that day. Could have put her in solitary confinement. Could have let her sit there for a few extra hours. So she just gave it to her husband and didn't make any gripe about it. You got to pick and choose your battles in prison. There's going to be a lot of things that go on that probably shouldn't be happening. And you have to decide, are you willing to face consequences if you don't agree with something that's happening? You're either going to speak up or you're going to do nothing, or you're going to tabulate, make notes, and present this type of information at the right time. So your first couple days in prison, it's really hard for somebody to completely prepare for that because there's a lot of unknown variables. You don't know what other inmates are going to be like. You don't know how staff is going to be. You might have great staff. You might have messed up staff. Adam Weber, one of our clients, that he got to Florence, Colorado a couple weeks ago at the camp. And then all of a sudden, his wife gets a call from, and we found out today what's actually going on. I spoke to his brother. So his wife got a call from his case manager and said, "Just want to let you know, Adam's not in trouble and he's not hurt. That's all I can tell you, but he can't make any phone calls or he can't do anything right now. He's basically, they put him in a shoe." She didn't know why. So rumors started bouncing around a little bit and they started saying, "Oh, he's being moved because they miscalculated his points and he's not camp eligible." Or they said because part of his crime had to do with ammunition. So maybe it was a gun crime and he got taken out of the camp and he's got to go to a low. We didn't know for sure what was going on, but this information was surfacing almost as a fact. His wife told me, "Oh, I found out what's going on. They said because of his charge that he can't go to a camp." So we're like, "Oh shit, well, he's going to get taken to a low." So today we found out why he actually was able to reach out to his brother. So he's at a different prison now. They brought him to a camp. And what happened was one of the other inmates in the prison is a guy that ran basically a Ponzi scheme that Adam was victim of. So one of Adam's neighbors is also at Florence, Colorado. And since this Ponzi scheme has happened, it's water under the bridge and him and Adam actually get along. But because the prison deemed it as you are a victim of this other guy, they put Adam in the shoe to redesignate him. And Adam asked him, he said, "Well, if I'm the victim, why are you moving me? And they said, well, he was here first. So, not that that makes it right or wrong, but that was their answer. Now, the downside is we're working really hard to get Adam into the residential drug addiction program. And the prison they sent him to does not have RDAP. Adam's on a 48-month sentence. So it does give us a little bit of time to try to help and make it known that he should be going into an RDAP program, which means where he's at, they have RDAP at the low, but not the camp. So we got to find out if they can put a manager variable on him to bring him from the camp to the low, or if they're going to have to transfer him to a whole nother camp, which means he's got to go. I mean, it's taken about 2.5 weeks now, and he's been in transit for 2.5 weeks, basically, just got to where he was going. So it's just one of those things that prison is going to be full of ups and downs, surprises, and the biggest thing you got to remember is you got to be willing to move with the flow. It is not easy. We tend to focus on a lot of the same things with a lot of you for the most part, because that's not something that happens all of the time, but it does happen. And when it does happen, you feel very isolated and you feel like it's only happening to you. But we do see a lot of screwy things happen from both sides. Inmates make mistakes, the prisons make mistakes, and people just aren't really prepared for what comes next, because we live our lives with habits and with rituals and things that we're used to doing. In prison, none of that stuff really matters. Any given day, something can be thrown in, a wrench can be thrown in and throw everything off. And if you're not one of these types of people that is normally ready just to move with whatever's going on, that can be really hard, because if you're a creature of habit and now all of a sudden every couple of days you're throwing something at you that you're not prepared for, that can take a mental toll on a lot of people. So the best thing that you can really be doing right now to get prepared is really focus on realizing that things outside of your control are going to happen, and you have to be willing to do your best to just let it roll off of you. If COs are giving you a hard time initially, do not respond adversely. I mean, yes, no, yes, sir, no, sir. If somebody tells you, something that you don't really agree with, and they tell you to go do something, or they tell you something that not to be true, they tell you can't bring in your wedding ring, and you want to sit there and argue with them, just realize you're not going to win the argument. You can probably win the argument if you just shut up and say, yes, sir, give the wedding ring to your wife or your husband. And then once you get there, talk to your case manager. Don't say, this guard said I can't have it. You don't want to get off on the wrong foot by going around telling on people necessarily while you're there. But you can find it and get it later. A lot of these COs, if they see that you don't respond and they don't get any type of, if they're not able to push your buttons and they're not getting a response, typically they'll move on to somebody else. And it's the same thing for COs. COs, if you're watching this and there's an inmate out there that's pushing your buttons and you're responding by firing off or trying to, turn his locker upside down, you're just going back and forth. No one's ever going to win. Sometimes you just got to realize that the right thing to do is nothing at all and just let it blow over until you're no longer the focus. If you sit there and make yourself the focus, you will be the focus the entire time. And being a negative focus can have adverse effects on things later on, like not just RDAP, but additional halfway house time and how you're going to be spending your days and what type of job you might get while you're in prison. So don't make things any harder than they already need to be. Remember, this isn't just hard on you. I can tell you when Adam's wife called me to tell me what was going on, I couldn't talk to her immediately because I was walking out of the house. I had a bunch of stuff in my hand. I said, I'll call you as soon as I get in the car. And I heard it in her voice when she said, I have some questions about Adam. I could hear the shakiness in her voice. I knew something was wrong. Family members are going right along through this with us. So when you get taken to the SHU, you probably know what's going on. Your family on the outside doesn't, because the prison doesn't tell them. They're not giving them a play-by-play update. She's lucky that she even got a call from the case manager at all. And at least the case manager said he's not hurt and he's not in trouble. So now you're still wondering, but you're not wondering, was he beat up or, did he do something stupid? At least you know it's not that. Most cases, they won't even give you that type of courtesy. So you really do have to appreciate everything that they do give while you're in prison, because not everybody gets the same type of respect. That's why it's really important to not just focus on prison reform and they need to fix the system, because if we as normal citizens didn't put ourselves into a lot of these situations, we wouldn't need this massive prison reform. You know, the major prison reform that they talk about, it's not stuff that affects somebody that's probably going to serve a short sentence for the most part. They're not looking, I don't think they're ever going to get rid of minimum mandatories altogether. I think we might see a reduction of minimum mandatories. We might see no longer giving 15, 20, 30-year minimum mandatories, but if somebody that's getting a 5-year minimum mandatory, depending on what the crime is, you just got to realize that, you know, even with a minimum mandatory of 5 years, if you have prepared yourself properly and you're looking at your good time and you're looking at potential time for the residential drug addiction program and you're looking at halfway house, you can still slice that time up pretty good to where you're serving 50% of a 60-month sentence or less than 50%. You have to be willing to put in the work and the effort, though. I was talking to somebody today. I think they're going to become a new client. And, you know, he's at a point where he's doing his change of plea. He already did his change of plea. Now he's got to go speak in front of the judge and make the plea official. And, you know, asking what kind of things can he do? And there's a lot. I spoke to another guy, Junior, who's on the show. You know, he's really nervous. He's looking at, I think he's looking at like a 24-month sentence. And he's just nervous of what can he be doing right now. A lot of people say, I watch the videos, I understand, you know, but how does this work? You know, it's not like we have some hidden piece over here that we don't want to give you guys. It's just, it's what we do. So it can't easily be replicated unless you've gone through this process and you've seen it work. It's kind of a trial and error, and we've gone through the trial and the error. We have a system now that makes a difference in the lives of our clients and their families, because it's not just helping you get a shorter sentence. It's helping everybody understand the dynamics of what matters, who the key piece people are. You've got your judges, your prosecutors, your probation officers, your attorney. You've got all these different moving parts, and everybody plays a role. A lot of people get caught up on, well, I got 24 months sentence, so that means 6 months off for RDAP. You got to remember, it's 24 months is what you need left on your sentence when you enter into the program. So if you're sentenced to 24 months and you get to a prison that has RDAP, but it doesn't start for 2 or 3 months, that creates an issue for whether or not you're going to be able to get time off. These are things that we help with, that we foresee before it becomes an issue, and we deal with it before you get to the prison by trying to change your surrender date, different things like that. Creating motions. You know, a lot of you are what's up, Junior? That's who I was talking about right there. I had a nice call with Junior last night, and Junior says, so Junior's sending over his paperwork. So welcome to the family, Junior. You know, we send everybody an intake form. When you decide you want to become a client or you're interested in becoming a client, we send you an intake form that has basic information that we're going to need, who your point of contacts are going to be, who you want to use for references. These are things that we need to know, because we're not just going to let you blindly do what you want. The whole point of hiring a prison well, I'm not going to say a prison consultant in general, because there are a lot of prison consultants out there that don't do this. I don't know why. But when a client comes aboard with us, we want to direct you as to what type of person you should be using for a personal narrative. And just to answer that simply, if you're out there and you're wondering who makes a good person or who makes a good character reference letter, you know, you don't want to be going to your professors or your employers or the pastor of your church. Not to say that they're not good character references, but from our experience and the research that we've done, what we see is typically if a judge is looking at your character reference letters and it's a reference from your employer, let's say, typically your employer doesn't really know you. He knows you as the guy at work, but he doesn't know you and your character, who you are outside of work, your true you. Friends and family, they know you in and out. They know the good, the bad, the ugly, the hidden. They know where all the bodies are. They usually know these things. So when you stick to immediate friends and family to write your character reference letters, usually the letters are going to definitely come off more sincere. There's going to be more info in those letters. It's not just going to be a professional letter going, Junior's a great guy and he shows up to work every day. He's a hard worker. He gets along with everybody. I mean, that's a very typical character reference letter. There's not really much else an employer could possibly say about you. Now, there might be some unique situations where your employer is also your friend or a family member. That's different. But the average employer who doesn't have any relation to you other than as your boss typically does not create a strong reference letter. Same thing with your priest. What's your priest going to say? Oh, Junior comes to church every day and he's always there to hold the door for an elderly person. I mean, there's only so much that person can say. Professors, a lot of people think, well, I know somebody that's on the police force, or I know somebody that, is an attorney. I'm going to get them to write a letter because they know how to speak the lingo. Judges see right through that. And the fact that federal defense attorneys don't identify that sooner and say, hey, don't use these people, use friends and family. I mean, that's a simple place for an attorney to start, saying, look, stick to friends and family. And you don't need 35 letters. Don't think that if you send in an arsenal of letters that's going to help. We all know that we could all go to everybody we know and create a letter. The judge is not impressed that you have 30 friends. He's just not. That doesn't say anything about your character. Most people know a lot of people. We could all go out and find 10 references tomorrow if we wanted to. There's nobody out there for the most part that couldn't find a bunch of references, whether they're true or false. A judge has no way to know if a reference that he's reading is a legit reference. He has no way to know this. So the best thing that we can do is take a lot of the guesswork out of it for the judge. And the way we can do that is, okay, if it's your son, your daughter, your brother, your mother, your uncle, your best friend, chances are the judge is going to believe this is a real person that really knows you because it's a family member, an immediate family member. And then we go into the focus of how they're writing these letters and what emphasis needs to go into these letters. What is the picture we're trying to create here? What is the ultimate goal? The ultimate goal is for this judge to see you differently than he sees other people. And the only way you can do that is you really have to put yourself in the mind of the judge and imagine, what do all of these other letters look like? What does the average letter to a judge say? And what you'll find is there's a lot of commonality through a lot of these letters. They may be different, but they're very much the same. They all have the same tone, and it's almost a begging, pleading, self-pity. He's not a bad guy. Give him a second chance. He's got sick parents. He's the sole provider in the house. My wife doesn't know how she's going to make it. Type of people. Those are the typical letters that you see. And even in situations when we tell people, stay away from those topics, we get the letters back and it's like they can't help themselves. It's almost like a drug addict that just can't say no. Even though they know they should, they just can't say no. And these letters have that same information in there. And I'm talking to Jenny and I'm like, wow, literally the directive we sent really explains on what not to do. And we're not telling you what to write. We're telling you what we feel you should stay away from and where your focus should go. Forget the self-pity. You've got 3 small children at home. We get it. We get that you have 3 small children at home. Just the fact that the judge knows you have 3 small children at home, you don't need to go into it on how hard this is going to be for them, because you weren't thinking about that when you were doing the crime that you were doing. Now, there are some of us that don't really believe what we did should be a crime. We don't believe that we should be doing prison time over it. But the one thing you need to remember, if you took a plea, that means you're agreeing that you did what they said you did. Now, whether or not you meant it or you didn't mean it, maybe you're just terrified because if you didn't take the plea, you're looking at a ton more time. You can't flip-flop back and forth. You can't sign the plea, but then also say you don't deserve to go to prison. It's kind of like, pick a side. And the problem is we've seen this happen. I saw this happen in my own case. Not my case for me, but in my indictment, other people on the case, they took they took responsibility. They had acceptance of responsibility, all of this stuff. But then during their accepting the plea, they didn't sound like they were really accepting it. They were kind of making excuses. And one of the guys on our case, I think it was Al, had his plea ripped away from him, and he was sentenced to like 3 more years than the rest of us because they took away his acceptance of responsibility. They didn't take his plea away, but they took his acceptance of responsibility away. So you got to be real careful when you're signing a plea, when you're agreeing to what the government wants you to agree to. You can't come back later on and say, but I didn't really do it. I just took the plea because I had to. The judge, that's not going to fly. Never going to fly. Let's see. Got to get back to work. I'll watch. Sounds good, Junior. Appreciate it. How many letters should we have? George, George is asking how many character reference letters should one have? I'm going to say that answer is a debatable answer. My opinion, and what we've seen work really, really well with clients, is 3 character reference letters plus your letter. So 4 letters total. Your personal narrative and 3 character reference letters. I'm sure there's people out there right now going, what? I've got like 50 letters written. You're telling me I only need 3? I'm sure that there might be judges out there that do want to see more. However, what we've seen is quality over quantity really seems to be the trump card. If you've got quality letters, quality people that are putting the effort in these letters, and you're not bombarding the judge with 50 pages, I don't care what the judge says. He's not interested in reading 50 letters. He may scan through them. He may say he read them, but I do not believe a judge is going to sit there and read 50 letters, because it's not like you're his only case. He's probably sentencing you and 10 other people that same week. So you're telling me everybody's got 50 letters and he's sentencing 10 people? He's going to read all of those letters? You're talking 500 letters, 1,000 letters. I don't believe it for a second. If a judge comes across his next case and he looks at it and he sees that there's 3 letters, I imagine that judge is like, thank God. I just want to go home. I want to go to lunch. And he takes the time to read those letters because they're not crazy letters. They're not going off the beaten path. They're not talking about things that don't matter. It's sticking to the facts. It's carrying the theme of the whole idea of the presentation that we're trying to create, of accountability, identifying victims, explaining what they did, explaining how they're going to use this time wisely, explaining how whatever period of incarceration that you do decide to give them, how they're going to use this time to better themselves. We're putting things into the letter that we feel the judge is not used to seeing, that makes sense, that shows accountability, that is going to make the judge realize maybe he doesn't have to slap you extra hard because he's reading some bullshit letter thinking this guy doesn't get it. So you never know what's going through a judge's mind. So to say exactly how many letters, I don't know, because I don't think anyone's ever answered that question. But we've seen clients turn in 3 letters. We've seen clients turn in 10, 15 letters. And we can tell you that the clients that have received reduced sentences, including probation, all of them followed the instruction and did not deter off of the path that we're creating. So I can only go from experience. So if you're going to ask me what I think is going to work best, I'm typically going to go with 3 letters, unless you can give us a real compelling reason why you need additional letters, or maybe your attorney has some inside insight on this specific sentencing judge, that there's always mitigating circumstances that can make a difference that we need to take into consideration. Not everybody's going to be the same type of a scenario, but rule of thumb, 3 letters plus your personal narrative. That's what I think. Does my opinion really matter? Hell yeah. Sure does. Rod, you're getting sentenced. I'm sentenced. So Rod received 48 months and you surrender March 13th. Do you know where you're going yet, Rod Pope? Man, I remember those times, man. God, it was so scary. This whole process of waiting and going back and forth to Georgia for court and different... It was just a nightmare. It was a nightmare. The worst, that was by far the absolute worst part of the entire process, was dealing with the uncertainty of what's next. And that's why today we really wanted to focus on, your first day in prison, because a lot of us, once we've done everything we can do to prepare, once you've stopped focusing on, once okay, you got your letters under control, you've dealt with your family, you've spoken to your kids, you've taken accountability, you're out there doing your community service, you're doing everything you can do. The next thing that's going to enter your mind is what's prison really going to be like? And I tell a lot of you, we're not going to waste a whole lot of time on when we're doing our coaching with you and our one-on-one and our phone calls. We're not going to spend a whole lot of time on what prison's going to be like, because the main things that we try to tell you is safety probably won't be an issue, especially if you're going to a camp or a low. So you don't have to worry about the safety, the violence. There's plenty of stuff to do, plenty of activity, plenty of fresh air, plenty of music, plenty of TV, plenty of books to read, plenty of communication with your family, visitations, no problem, emails, no problem, phone calls, no problem, video chats in a lot of prisons, no problem. So there's really not a lot that you need to worry about. However, I do understand there's still that underlining fear and anxiety of the unknown. And I would say the biggest thing, if you're going to fear anything going to prison, the biggest thing you need to fear is you don't know how people are going to respond. I don't just mean inmates. We're talking about guards too, staff. You don't know what you don't know. And the sooner you realize that and you just give in to that, you'll realize, what do I need to do? How should I conduct myself initially in a new environment? Just think about your first couple of days at school. You just kind of, hopefully, unless you were like a crash test dummy and you were always diving headfirst into trouble, hopefully you kind of just like sat back, took it in, made mental notes, see how people are, see who you want to avoid, see who you want to, you're like, that. See, that person seems all right. That person seems like they got their head screwed on tight. I don't mind attaching myself to that person. You can see how guards interact with inmates. I remember there was a guard, I don't remember his name, and I wish I had this guy's name because I would love to make a YouTube video about this dummy. He was just a true blue asshole of a guard. And, you know, I get it. I'm sure he deals with idiot inmates all day long, but this guy goes out of his way. He had these giant, ridiculously thick bifocals on. I mean, it just made his eyes pop out. And he wore this ugly headband, and he had this giant head. He just didn't look right. And he was the meanest son of a bitch I ever met. And I'd seen him go off on other inmates for no reason. Just seen him like pop off on them, especially RDAP. Like a lot of COs do not respect inmates in RDAP. They don't respect the program at all. They hate the program. They think the program is retarded and should be removed from the BOP. So they're completely against it, but they're forced to deal with us. So they really take it out on us. So when I originally got to prison, I was at Coleman Low. I was in what's called A unit. So they have A, B, and C. I've told this story before, but for those of you that haven't heard it, I'll tell it one more time. So I was in what's called A1. So each unit, so A unit had A1, A2, A3, and A4. There was 2 units on the bottom floor, 2 units on the top floor. Each unit held roughly about 150 guys. A1 is the first unit. So when they would do count time, A1 was usually the unit that would get counted first. A lot of the times when they do the counts, they have to have a lieutenant present when they do count. So you've got lieutenant plus you've got your regular CO that's doing count. So at Coleman, the lieutenant, he would be the one that counts every unit, and he'd always start at A1. So they had a midnight count time. You wouldn't have to get up for this. They would just count you while you're asleep. The thing is you can't be out of your you can't be out of your unit or your cell, so to speak, your cube. You can't be out of your designated little area while they're doing count time. So if it's midnight, you get up and you got to use the bathroom. If it's 12:30, 12:45, you're pretty good to go. You know, okay, you woke up. If it's that late, they've already done count because count starts at midnight and you're the first unit that they're going to count. If you wake up at 11:50 and you got to use the bathroom, you might have to stand there and do the pee-pee dance and hold it until they come through and do count time, because you can get a shot, which is a serious infraction for interrupting count. So for my first couple of months, I got there in September. I didn't move over to RDAP until January. So from September to January, I was in A1. I got accustomed. My habits were designed to that count time. I knew we were typically done by 12:15, 12:20 at the latest. So now I'm over in C2 in the RDAP unit. I've been transferred over there because I'm starting RDAP. So I'm there about a week and a half, and I get up in the middle of the night. It's like 12:20, 12:25, maybe 12:30. And it didn't even dawn on me that maybe they hadn't done count yet. So I just, go to the bathroom. Can't hear anything. I'm half asleep, got my eyes, do my little thing, pee, wash my hands. As soon as I walk out of the bathroom, man, that giant mag flashlight, boom, just came into my eyes, full beaming. This guy's screaming at me, and I have no idea what's coming on. "You're fucking up my count, inmate." Just screaming. And I'm just like, what? I had no idea what was going on. The other CO right next to him trying to diffuse the situation. He's like, just go back to your unit, go back to your bed. So I'm like going back to my bed, and he's yelling, oh, you're getting a write-up for this. Everyone in here is going to have to pull you up tomorrow because they all know that you're in trouble. So basically, when you have staff interaction, you're required to either pull yourself up in a morning meeting or one of your peers, another RDAPper, needs to pull you up. So after it calmed down, the other CO came to my unit. He's like, don't worry about it. Just, I'm glad you did. He pretty much told me, you did the right thing by not doing anything at all. And I'm just like, what the fuck? Like, I'm still new. I'm like shaking still. I'm like, what the fuck? So next morning, of course, somebody raises their hand. Mr. Wise, I'd like to pull you up. You had interaction with staff. You were out of bounds during count time. And you know this is an RDAP rule, blah, 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 blah. Really like, and then of course, staff members like, well, tell us what happened. And, I was like, I got up at 12:25. I went to the bathroom and came out, and she's like, did you know count hadn't happened yet? I'm like, I didn't, and she's like, well, why would you think it hadn't happened yet? And I think she knew the answer. So I think she was trying to lead me to say it. I was like, well, I lived in A1. We always got counted first. I never dawned on me, I just didn't think. It was a reaction. I wasn't really paying attention. I was like, I'll make sure to pay attention to the time. She goes, so you came from a different unit who was used to a different time. And she goes, that makes sense. I could see how that could happen. It's not the end of the world. You just need to be more, and she pretty much killed it. Dr. Smith, the RDAP coordinator at Coleman, was really good about not letting pull-ups be used as a tool to hurt somebody if there was no need for it. And she did a good job. It wasn't the end of the world. I got pulled up. I accepted it. There was no consequence from it. The consequence is the shit got scared out of me in that moment. That was the consequence. So from that point forward, if I ever woke up and it wasn't super late, if it was like before 1 a.m., I would pop my head up out of my unit like a little ferret looking around and look for anybody that might have their reading light on, that might still be awake, and psst, psst, hey, did they do count yet? Yeah, you're good. So I didn't get that okay, man. I was waiting. And there were some times where, and we've all been there, where you got to pee. And you got to pee, and the more you think about it, the more you got to pee. It's like when you're on your way home, and you're in the car and you're driving, and you realize you got to go to the bathroom, and you start thinking about how long you got before you get there. It just starts getting harder and harder and harder. And, so I really made sure to go to the bathroom at night, not drink a lot of water till after, that final count time. You knew it was done. And it's just a lesson learned. So you got to be prepared for these things. And what I mean by be prepared is you got to be prepared for things to happen that you're not going to be used to. You have to be willing to create and form new habits, because prison is its own society. It's its own world. Regular rules that you think should apply in a prison system do not necessarily apply. Just because something is not fair doesn't mean you bitching or complaining or you think you're going to right the system. You're going to go talk about it and you're going to get it fixed. We've seen people that have did the right thing about how staff was mistreating, and when that information got passed around, it would come back on them, to where I remember, another incident. So we had a shakedown, and I'm not sure why they picked on this one guy, but they picked on this guy pretty bad during the shakedown. Like, they shook down everybody's cube. They went to everybody's locker. They ruffled up everybody's bed. They threw mattresses and sheets and blankets and took a lot of stuff out of lockers and just made a mess in the cube. So you've got 2 or 3 people living in a cube, and they're taking everything out of everybody's locker and throwing it into the middle of the room. Everybody's shit's getting mixed up with each other. Their blankets and pillowcases and towels and your face cloth. It's all over the ground, touching the grimy ground. It's bad enough. So this one guy, they literally turned his locker upside down. When I say turned it upside down, I mean literally like took the locker and flipped it up and put it on its, the top of it was now on the ground. And we don't know why they did this to this guy. So he wasn't complaining. I mean, he was complaining to us. And one of the staff overheard it and said, "What happened?" And he was like, nothing. She's like, "No, you tell me right now. I'm telling you to tell me what happened." So he told her, but he said he didn't want to do anything about it. So the staff member, who was trying to be helpful, went and brought it to one of the lieutenants. And that night, oh my God, we all paid the price. We all paid the price. They did a fire drill. Boom, fire drill. Everybody gets out of the unit. They must have spent, and they didn't do this to make us practice the fire drill. They did this so they could go in our unit and do whatever the fuck they wanted to do for an hour without us being there. And when we came back in, it looked like a hurricane, a tornado, and an earthquake all had a giant party in our dorm. There was just stuff from my unit was clear across this. I mean, it's like they're like, every CO grab a locker and go to a different cube and empty it out on the floor. I mean, it took us, we were a couple of days sorting through our stuff. It was like when you look at these pictures of devastation in like Homestead from these hurricanes that took place, or the Keys, and you're watching people just go, where do I start? How do I put my life back together? It's just a million puzzle pieces scattered, except it's not one puzzle. You've got like 5 different puzzles with all its pieces missed, and you're trying to pluck out the pieces and put it with the proper puzzle. I don't know if I can give a better explanation than that, but it was one of the things that would happen. That was one of staff's ways of retaliating. When somebody told, like, staff sticks together, just like inmates stick together. And that's part of the problem, is there's this combativeness. Now, yeah, it's easy to say inmates or staff members should know better, but come on. Humans are human. People are people. At the end of the day, that's their group. This is our group. We have to find common ground and be able to deal with it. Nobody complained about that day. No one said anything. All I remember is the staff saying, if anybody has any complaints, let us know. We'll be back tomorrow to deal with it. I mean, they would have kept doing this. And you could tell they might have enjoyed it a little bit. And I can't lie. I can't say that if I wasn't in the mentality of a CEO and that was my job and a boring job at a prison, that might have been something that got my rocks off too. Who knows? So this is just the life that they're dealt, and that's what they got to deal with. I'm sure there were some of them that took no pride in doing it and probably, were doing less than others. But in every industry you've got good people and bad people, and then people in the middle. So it's an environment that's really, really rough and fucked up. When we start doing our podcast, when I get back from Florida, a lot of these stories are going to be stuff that we really bring into the podcast. We've been making a log of prison stories that I can attest to that I was actually there. And there's actually way more than I remember. Going through all of these letters that hopefully Jenny will get up on the site soon, letters from prison. A lot of the stuff is written in those letters. And there's a lot of really interesting stories that it's not so much about violence. It's more of just how easily your emotions can be thrown into turmoil, because we all crave comfort. And we all crave that in the we all crave that in the sense of organization to some degree, a system, habits. And when those habits get twisted and something gets plucked out of place, it can really throw us into a state of chaos. And prison bases a lot of their control on chaos. They use chaos to control us, because if they can take away just your basic needs and use that over your head, they can get you to conform to do about anything. Take the TV away for a week and everybody calms down. Take the microwave away for one night. Watch what happens. I've got stories about when they would take the microwave away, how this would just shut people down. Any idea how British prison is like? No, I really, Hutchaz. I don't know if I'm pronouncing your name right, but how you doing, Hutchaz? I don't have any idea how prisons are like in the UK might be. Those of you that you might know, Sean, can't think of his last name, Sean, he's got a YouTube channel. He did time in UK prison. Sean, name just jumped out of my mind. Hutchaz, you may even know who I'm talking about. That is how I say it. All right, point for Dan. I recently received a plea. I'm doing 1 year at a camp in Maryland. I'm 6 foot, 270 pounds. Will people see me as a threat and bring me problems? Connor, whether you're 6 foot, 270 pounds, or whether you're 4'9", 100 pounds, I mean, you're going to a camp. If you have problems at a camp, it's you. You're the problem. If you go to a camp and get into issues, I promise you, the issues were caused by yourself, because camps are not designed No one goes to a camp is looking for problems. No one wants to mess with anybody. No one's looking to fight. You don't got to go into a camp and go, that's the biggest guy, I need to knock him out. Nobody wants those issues. Now, if you come across as intimidating, and people can't just say because you're big, you can't use that as an excuse. You can't say, well, people find me intimidating because I'm big. Bullshit. If they find you intimidating because you're big, you might be kind of using that a little bit to your advantage without realizing it. I know plenty of big dudes that come off very calm, and they let you know they have this very calming way about them. So if you're like that, what's an offensive tattoo? Like offensive gang-related tattoos, or offensive tattoo like hate? Like give me a description of what you're talking about. And I don't know why I can't think of Sean's name, Hutchos. He's actually supposed to be coming on my channel here. He had the flu. God, I can't think of his name. I'll look it up for you guys, but he's got a YouTube channel, and he's been making a lot. He's actually got quite a bit larger following than me. Jealous, but hopefully we'll get this channel growing a little bit more. Ex-Nazi. You can read about me if you want. Google my full name. I wouldn't say you're going to have a problem at a camp. I mean, especially if you make it known. I mean, you're telling me you're ex-Nazi, so I'm imagining. Now, do you have gang affiliations? Because if you got any type of gang affiliations, you're not going to a camp. If you're affiliated in any way, or you were affiliated anyway, I will look you up. Usually they won't put you to a camp for that reason. But if you're not gang affiliated or affiliated to any type of situation like that, you let people know it's the old me. You know, it is what it is. You know, obviously you're not going to want to walk around, act like you're sporting. I mean, look, unless still deep down inside that's still who you are, you know, then that will probably come out in your presence when you're around, you know, people of color, black people, Spanish people. You know, we saw some guys that were like that, and I was at a low, so it wasn't really anything to worry about, no violence. But we saw guys that had neo-Nazi type ink on them, and you could tell that they were still slightly proud of it, and they were showing it off to an extent. I chose to not associate with those type of people because I didn't feel like we were of the same type of mind. You know, I first off, it's not about tattoos. One of my best friends in there was tatted from the neck to his small toe. It was the message that his tattoos were displaying. And if he would have been very clear about, hey, this is the old me, I no longer want to be associated like this. I feel like if you really are disassociated yourself from that, I feel like you would take the responsibility to go and cover up those tattoos, especially going into a prison atmosphere. But you know, to each their own, man. I don't know what your intents are, or what, you know, if you are concerned about the tattoos. I know you're not going to have any violence issues, but that doesn't mean you won't have political issues in prison. You might have guards that take offense to it, and they never say anything to you, but something goes down, you're the one getting blamed for it. You don't know. If I were you, if you're no longer associated to that lifestyle and you're looking to change your life from that lifestyle, to me, one of those steps is covering up those tattoos and make it no longer a part of who you are. You know, it's just ink covered up with more ink. Turn it into a nice little unicorn. But that was just my take on that. You know, I want a tattoo. I've always wanted a tattoo. I just don't have any yet because I'm too indecisive. I don't know what I want the tattoo to be of, but would love to have a tattoo. I don't want anything offensive. I want something that I'm going to be okay with for the rest of my life. You know, it's a big deal. I recently got some blacked out, actually. I'm going to email you them. Yes, that's the thing, man, is you just got to get them, you know, get them removed. Where you're going, there's not going to, you know, in a camp, you won't see anybody tattooing. If you were going to like a medium or a pen, you could get them covered up for a fucking fish mackerel or, you know, a little bit of commissary. But I would definitely work on covering up as much as possible. And then if you do have ones that are still very, very out there, just keep that in mind when you're going out to work on the yard. Like, Don't walk around with your shirt off as much, because when you're walking around with your shirt off, if you've got Nazi tattoos, it is going to look like you're waving your flag. And if you want, and you can only look, we can't control somebody's perception. So if me and you are walking out in the yard and I don't know you and I see this giant swastika on your back, my perception is, if I'm not being completely open-minded, my perception might be this guy is waving his flag right now looking for problems. And you might do that with somebody who is looking for problems. And now, not that you're going to get beat up or do the beating up, but even if you get into an altercation, you risk getting moved from the camp to a higher security prison, where now that does become an issue. So my advice to you would be, do your best to cover it up. Make it known right away that you no longer live this lifestyle, that you're no longer engaged, and you're doing what you can to get them covered up. We all make mistakes in life. Some of us, we just put those mistakes on permanent ink, which makes it a little hard to undo. Trust me, if my mistakes were permanent ink, I would be one tattooed motherfucker right now. So thank God my life mistakes didn't include tattoos. But yeah, man, everybody judges everybody. Unfortunately, a book is judged by its cover more so than it's not. And you just got to understand that. So going in there with inked up gang, white supremacy, anything like that, especially what we're going on right now, where, it's gotten overboard with the whole race situation now. And it's almost like people are looking for a reason. I emailed you my blackout, patched, and swastikas. Sounds good, Connor. Connor, how old are you? Oh, that might have been an email from Connor. And it is. Let's see. Connor, you care if I share this with what's going? Do you care if I share this on here? Doesn't have anything of your personal information. It's just a picture. I'll wait for Connor to respond, and if he says okay, I'll show you guys a picture of his tattoos, and you can tell us what we're looking at. Okay, so let's see which ways look better. Okay, we'll go this way. So here's the first one, and Connor, you can tell us what this is. This is the established. It looks like a badge. So Connor, feel free to explain what that is and what that would mean to somebody that understands it. And just when you type it out, just type out before you say it. Say first, put the number 1ST in front of. Oops. So that was the first one. And the second one, yeah, this looks very racist just from looking at it. I would definitely try to get that one covered up. Like, I don't even know what that means, but to me it just looks very, very like Hitlerish. So we got some boots. I'm not sure what's that above it. Looks almost like a gas mask that you would wear when you're getting ready to burn a bunch of Jews. That's the impression I get when I look at that. To me, that looks like, wow, this guy just wants to kill us all. And you're 21, so I imagine you were young. You weren't really thinking through how's this going to look 30 years from now. And that's my perception of it. My perception might be completely wrong. Those are boots. Used to have a swastika on them, and yeah, that's a gas mask. So yeah, so it does have a very hate-filled message on there. I was around 13 when I started. Yeah, at 13, you're impressionable. You're impressionable by your surroundings, your peers, people that you look up to. So should this define who you are for the rest of your life? No. But if you leave them on you, you will be judged for them for the rest of your life, and you can't. You got to find a spot with yourself to where you don't get offended if somebody were to walk up to you, and say something to you like, you white racist piece of shit. If somebody were to walk up to you and say that, you've got to be prepared how you're going to handle those type of situations. And handling those type of situations in a camp where you're at a very easy, soft place doesn't need to result to violence. No one's going to look at you crazy if you don't act of violence. You can walk away. You can say, I'm working on getting these removed. I'm sorry that I offended you with this. That's not my intent, and you move on from that. Obviously if it escalates, you have to be able to defend yourself. That's different. But I don't think you shouldn't allow yourself to get offended. You don't have the luxury of being offended knowing that those tattoos are on you. We'll play a game of jump rope to settle the beef. There you go. That's the right answer. You're young. So 21 years old is young when you go into prison, meaning other young guys your age are going to cater to you. And usually the younger somebody is, the more likely they are to make irrational decisions. So you have to really, really prepare your mind mentally and do your best to surround yourself with older dudes that have been through things and they're doing the right thing now. Try to stay away from a lot of the young guys. The young guys that I saw in the low that were between the age of 19 and mid 20s, they were the ones that were involved in just stupid foolishness, smoking cigarettes, doing, just things that could easily get you in trouble and cause a lot of grief. So just stay away from those type of situations if you can. Try to hang out with people a little bit older that are doing the right thing and are focused on the right thing, and you'll be fine. You won't be defined by those. Once everybody gets to know you, you'll be okay. You just got to get past the first couple of days on having a book judged by its cover. Once you get past that, people no longer see the cover and they start paying attention to the pages. The guy that I told you guys about, that had tattoos from his neck, he's actually back in prison right now, I think. But his name was Hurd. One of the best dudes I ever met. However, when I first met him, to me, he didn't seem approachable. Didn't seem like we would ever have anything in common. I have 0 tattoos. He's covered from neck to toe. He was a major drug addict. I was never a serious drug addict. I smoked a little bit of weed and drank alcohol on the weekends. So I didn't think we'd have anything in common. Well, we were in the chow hall, and we got put on lockdown due to a storm outside. They wouldn't open the compound because it was not safe because of lightning. So me and Hurd were stuck in the chow hall for probably 2 hours, sitting at the same table, and we just started talking. Then the dialogue became more and more and more. And I told him, I was like, "Yeah, you're not approachable. You've got a very you're quiet. You don't say much. You seem angry. You've got this mad look on your face." And he agreed. He's like, "I do. I need to work on that." I was like, "Yeah, especially when you're tatted from your head to your fucking toes and you got a bald head and you're white, kind of gives off you might hate some people." And he's like, "Yeah, I used to hate everybody and I wish I never got these tattoos." And I'm like, "You just need to open up. You need to be a little bit more open than the average person to get people to know who you are." And me and that guy became good friends. I watched him cry before. I watched him talk about his parents and how he doesn't want to go back to a life of drugs. And I think he did, unfortunately. But getting to know somebody sometimes is hard. And I learned that in prison, that spending time around people that you typically would not spend time around, man, that can be one of the best things you can do in prison, because you really get to see life from different perspectives and take things into consideration for what you can do better in your own life and maybe how bad your life really was not before all of this. So that's all we got today, guys. This video is already like 1 hour and 3 minutes. So for those of you that are getting ready to self-surrender, those of you that are getting ready for your case, no matter where you are in your journey right now, just remember there are things that you can do to sway the outcome. You have to be willing to prepare. You have to be willing to put in the hard work, and you have to be willing to bring people into your team that can benefit your interest and not just tell you what you want to hear, tell you what you need to hear. With that said, guys, I'm RDAP Dan, Federal Prison Time. As always, people helping people one day at a time, community as method. I love every single one of you guys, and I will see you all on Monday. Have a great weekend. Peace.